Shopping is hard, right? But I found a better way. Stitch Fix online personal styling makes it easy. I just give my stylist my size, style, and budget preferences. I order boxes when I want and how I want. No subscription required. And he sends just for me pieces, plus outfit recommendations and styling tips. I keep what works and send back the rest. It's so easy. Make style easy. Get started today at stitchfix.com/Spotify. That's stitchfix.com/Spotify.
This is Let the Record Show. Now, here are your hosts, Judge Richard Weinberg and Suffolk County Republican Committee Chairman Jesse Garcia.
Welcome back to Let the Record Show. This is Judge Richard Weinberg. With me is Eric Levine, noted attorney, commentator, and essayist. Chairman Garcia of the Republican Party had to leave for an important meeting. We welcome to the show, and we're honored and privileged to have him, Senator Anthony Palumbo, State Senator from Long Island. It's District 1, and he's a leader amongst the Republicans in the state legislature and a common sense gentleman. And I'm very happy to have you here, Senator. Thank you for joining us.
Well, thanks for having me, Judge. And Eric, good to hear from you. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Great to be here.
So just briefly, just tell our audience, you're in District 1. What does District 1 encompass?
Well, certainly. The first senatorial district is all 5 eastern towns of Long Island and northern Brookhaven to the Smithtown line. So to give you a little bit more of an accurate picture, the Hamptons, which are Southampton Town and East Hampton Town, all the way to Montauk, Shelter Island, which is in between the two forks, and then the North Fork, which is Southold and Riverhead towns. And you go from really Orient Point along the North Shore all the way out to Stony Brook University. So essentially, Stony Brook is kind of the westernmost part of Brookhaven. So from Stony Brook to Montauk is essentially a very large geographic district, about 340,000 people, comprise the first senatorial district out of the 63 in New York State.
And what's your background, Senator?
Sure. Well, I grew up in Central Brookhaven in Patchogue. I went to Lafayette College. And as I say, about 35 pounds ago, I was an all Patriot League third baseman. And then after college, I worked in the Manhattan DA's office, went to St. John's Law School, graduated St. John's Law School, became an assistant district attorney in Suffolk County. My dad was a Suffolk County homicide detective, so I grew up in a law enforcement family. I was in the DA's office in a major crime bureau, did rapes and robberies and homicides, and then became a trial supervisor for a few years, and then went into private practice for probably around 10 years, a little more than 10 years. And then after realizing after about 16, 17 years, people don't like lawyers, I like to say I got into a new career path and ran for state assembly in 2013. I realized since people don't like lawyers, I apparently didn't get the memo and became someone involved in elected office. But it's an extremely rewarding position, of course. In 2013, and I'd never run for office prior to that. But from 2013 through 2020, I represented the 2nd Assembly District, which is really that whole North Fork and some northern Brookhaven. And then when Senator Laval retired in 2020, he asked me to run, and I picked up the mantle and fortunately won. They're 2-year terms, as you know, so I won in 2020 and 2022, and now I'm seeking a third term in a few weeks.
Great. Well, this is what I want to ask you. When we talk on this show, on Let the Record Show, we're trying to bring truth to the American people and common sense. And I'm the House Democrat, as you know, and Eric is.
But he's the most conservative one here.
And Eric is the House Republican. But I try to be a common sense Democrat, and I know you and Eric and Jesse Garcia are common sense Republicans. But this is my problem. My problem is that the supermajorities in the state legislature have led to very dangerous legislation, which is detrimental to public safety, to the economy, the future of New York State. So in my humble opinion, even though I'm a Democrat, I'm telling all my friends they have to vote. When they vote, they have to vote against this progressive left-wing tilt, which is a threat to our system of government and the viability in New York. It's important that the state legislature has more Republicans, both in the Assembly and in the Senate. What are your thoughts on that, Senator?
Well, sure, and that's a very valid point. When you think about what the current Democratic Party, the Democrats, this isn't your grandmother's Democrat Party. I sued the Senate as the ranking Republican on the Judiciary Committee to just get the Hector LaSalle nomination for Chief Judge. He happened to also be the first Latino nominee for Chief Judge. He's a lifelong Democrat. He's a fantastic judge. And they refused to even get his vote to the floor because they wanted a progressive crazy. Quite frankly, that's who they got in Rowan Wilson, who is now the chief judge. So we have now a supermajority, and the reason why that is so dangerous is not only are they veto-proof, they can override the governor, but you have such a large group that even the moderate Democrats in the suburbs, in the Mid-Hudson, on Long Island, even some of them upstate, you can let them off and still have a majority vote to pass this really, really progressive, radical legislation. For example, we lost the majority in the Senate in the 2018 election. So in 2019, we got bail reform. We got discovery reform. Think of this. Discovery reform has been so bad, and not many people highlight that because they just think about bail reform. Alvin Bragg's office last year at a public hearing we had on public protection for the budget, Alvin Bragg, not the most aggressive prosecutor you'll ever meet, right? We know who Alvin Bragg is. His office complained they dismissed just under 50% of the DWI arrests because of technical violations due to discovery reform. So they were actual legitimate arrests. There were cases they should have been able to prosecute, but due to the fact that this legislature is so focused on defendants' rights, they've completely lost sight of the victim and reality and public safety. That is another one of these horrendous policies that has unfortunately made us less safe. So they dismissed them. They just threw them out. And that's just DWI. And this is happening across the board on the prosecution side. I was a prosecutor. As I said, I was in a narcotics bureau. I was in a major crime bureau. I was a boss. I was a supervisor. So this administrative side of it, you have lawyers doing administrative work instead of lawyer work in the DA's office where they could be doing their job. And this is the problem. When you have one-party rule and you have basically, instead of having Republicans and Democrats fighting to meet in the middle, you have progressive New York City, proud Democrat socialists of America fighting with the liberals to find where the pendulum will swing and land between those two ideologies. So you don't even have anyone near the center who's actually trying to make an argument that is being listened to when it comes to statewide policy. That's the dangerous part, Judge.
Well,
That's really the concern.
Before I turn this over to Eric, I just want to raise one other issue. Well, actually, two issues. One, you have all this Green New Deal legislation, which is just unworkable. So you're not going to be able to have a sufficient supply of energy if the laws that the radical left has pushed through in their secular religion of Green New Deal. So what are you going to do about air conditioning in the summer and heating in the winter? What are you going to do about running all the computers and supplying the hospitals? How are people going to get anywhere when you have electric cars where you don't have sufficient power stations to furnish the electricity for them? And by the way, you need fossil fuels to run electric cars, to have the generation for electricity. So it's ridiculous. That's one. And then the other thing that makes my eyes bleed, my head explode, Senator, is reparations. This legislature, run by the radical left, wants to now have a commission that they've established for reparations. So we're going to have a divisive piece of legislation where they're going to have hearings and they're going to force people who are not slave owners, because New York was not a slave-owning state, and they're going to be paying reparations if this legislation is vindicated, because the commission will just give them whatever they want. And that's very dangerous, too. Your thoughts on those two issues, and we'll turn it over to Eric.
Certainly. Well, I'll start with the second one first. I mean, the reparations is a pander, right? This is something that, how are you going to have any reasonable degree of certainty when you're trying to decide who gets what? I don't know how you can fairly distribute those funds. On my mother's side, and we've traced it back, that it's 8 generations ago, I have some Native American lineage, not Elizabeth Warren style, but
the real deal. The real deal.
Right. A real 1/64th.
Yeah, right, or less, right? But at the end of the day, should I get reparations? I mean, where does it stop? And so this is clearly a political pander, and, it's the New York City machine doing what they want to try and curry favor in an election year. That's one. On the renewable side, on the energy side, we need to smartly and reliably get there. I have more lineal feet of waterfront than any district in the state because of the nature of the east end of Long Island and all the islands and estuaries and shorefront that I have. But what are you going to do in Buffalo when you have 3 feet of snow where the batteries are inefficient? How the heck are you going to charge school buses during the day when they're supposed to be driven and the batteries are cold and inefficient? So these are these lofty, flashy press conferences that Governor Hochul fell right in line. Cuomo would do the same thing, but Hochul is doing it to the nth degree that they're proudly going to seek these incredibly unattainable goals and force it down everyone's throat, regardless of expense, regardless of reliability, and make everyone do it when we don't even have the technology yet. We want to get there, of course, but we're mandating all these things like electric school buses, or mandating, no gas stove, no 100-foot hookup, all the crazy things that they're saying. And I'm a greenie. I really do think I have a very good environmental record. That's not being an environmentalist. That's absolutely bananas. And when we talk about nuclear energy, that was not in the discussion because all the activists said, oh, no, how dare you do that? It's dangerous. Well, it's not in 2024. And now all of a sudden in this last year, the Climate Council said, well, part of our plan needs to include zero emission, by the way, nuclear energy. So they've come around because they've been shown to be absolutely ridiculous with their attempted goals. And that's really the concern, that we need to do it smartly and reliably and not just have a splashy press conference and press release and expect for it to really just happen when the technology, unfortunately, isn't there yet.
Okay, we're with State Senator Anthony Palumbo of District 1 in the State Senate, a very distinguished member of the State Senate, formerly a member of the State Assembly. Eric, you have some questions for the Senator.
Yeah, Senator, thank you for joining us. I think we can all agree on this call that some of the Democratic policies that we've been discussing are kind of insane, and that and you've discussed, I think, pretty thoroughly and persuasively why a supermajority in the Senate is very dangerous with the one-party rule. But there is one-party rule, and I'm just curious if you have any thoughts as to why, with all these bad policies, Republicans are having such a difficulty in winning back. Let's not even talk about the majority in the Senate, winning back enough seats to end the supermajority.
Lights, camera, innovation. Walt Disney Studios chose advanced 5G solutions from T-Mobile for Business to transform the movie-making process. Together, we kept a remote production hub in Hawaii in sync with a team in California to bring Lilo and Stitch to theaters this summer. This is picture-perfect collaboration. This is Walt Disney Studios with T-Mobile for Business. Take your business further at T-Mobile.com/now.
Morning decisions. A creamy mocha frappuccino drink? A sweet vanilla? Maybe a smooth caramel? Or that white chocolate mocha? Whichever you choose, delicious coffee awaits. Start your day with bottled Starbucks Frappuccino drinks. Pick up a bottle near you wherever you buy your groceries.
Build professional skills this semester with Adobe Creative Cloud and create standout work both in and out of the classroom. Save big on professional creativity tools. Students get 65% off Adobe Creative Cloud, including Photoshop, Illustrator, Premiere Pro, Acrobat Pro, and 20-plus creative apps. No matter what project you're working on, Adobe Creative Cloud apps can help you take it to the next level. Visit adobe.com/student to learn more.
Parents of tweens, if you're familiar with far-off drop-offs...
Dad, stop, right here.
Or get DMs about what's for dinner, you may be experiencing tween milestones. For your son or daughter, these can start at age 9. HPV vaccination, a type of cancer prevention against certain HPV-related cancers, can start then too.
For most, HPV clears on its own. But for those who don't clear the virus, it can cause certain cancers later in life.
Embrace this phase. Help protect them in the next.
Ask their doctor today about HPV vaccination. Brought to you by Merck.
So I think we make some inroads this year. I think the pendulum is swinging back. And, I really do believe that, fortunately on Long Island, and the gentleman you were just speaking to before me, Chairman Jesse Garcia, I've known him. Our fathers were fire commissioners together. I've known him for many, many years. We have a very common sense plan. And that's why out of the 9 senators on Long Island, 7 of us are Republicans. because I think the suburbs get it. The wrinkle is that you've got very effective messaging coming from the Democratic Party on the state level. They have a ton of money. They have a lot more money than us. In 2020, when Ken LaValle left the Senate and I ran, they spent $3.4 million against me. I was outspent 10-1 in a slightly Republican district. Since redistricting, I actually am in a Democrat district. It's like a D2 or 3%, 20,000 roughly, 30,000 more maybe, Democrats than Republicans. But they were able to really push on the issues because they have so much money. We're a very blue state, very wealthy donors, fund them well. And quite frankly, if we didn't have the Supreme Court Dobbs decision on the abortion issue in 2022, Lee Zeldin is governor. And Lee Zeldin, the fact that he was within 5 or 6 points, and when you know the registration, I'll just repeat it for the listeners real quick. Just under 50% registered Democrats in New York State, 23% registered blank, and 22% registered Republicans. So we're third. Governor Hochul should have smoked any Republican candidate by 25, 30 points. But Lee Zeldin was a fantastic legislator, is a great guy. We combined our campaigns. He was my congressman for many years. And in 2014, we ran together when he first took on Tim Bishop. But that's the type of, when you think about how close that was, the amount of the tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of Democrats who voted for Lee Zeldin because they're sick of it, just barely wasn't enough. So that's really the wrinkle, that we have a registration and a Democratic Party that just blindly votes for the Democrats. Right. We've got a little over 30% in the city. How crazy is that?
Eric has an important question that we want to get to, because it's very, very important that the voters understand this issue.
So we want to talk about Proposition.
I got on a roll, Judge. Sorry.
That's okay. We love rolls. Proposition 1, which is going to be on the ballot. Please explain to the listeners what exactly is Proposition 1 and why I think we all agree they should vote no.
Sure. The bottom line, and I know I have to be quick, is that you have to get in the weeds a little bit, but with my lawyer hat on too. We have a bunch of rights now that are all conflated with each other, or all on equal footing. So if you're a Catholic hospital and you want to exercise your freedom of religion because someone wants to exercise their reproductive rights, according to the Democrats, for an abortion, which are now codified in our Constitution, the Catholic hospital can be forced, in my opinion, to perform an abortion, despite their religious beliefs. If you have a male who wants to identify as a woman, you don't even have to be going through transition therapy. You can just say, I want to play field hockey in high school. The school can and most likely will be sued for discriminating against that boy who wants to play on a girls' field hockey team.
We've been talking to Senator Anthony Palumbo of the 1st Senatorial District out on Long Island. Senator, it's a great privilege and pleasure to have you on the show. On behalf of Eric Levine and myself, we've been delighted to chat with you. I think it's very, very important. We began this segment by saying it's absolutely essential to break the supermajority control by the Democratic Party of the state legislature. Will go a long way by reelecting people like you and electing Republicans to the state Senate to block the progressive, radical agenda of the New York City Democrats. Senator, thank you for being with us today on Let the Record Show.
Terrific. Thanks so much for having me. And that's it. We need to hold our seats and gain a bunch. Thank you so much for having me.
Stuck in a job you hate? Wish you could break into tech, but don't know where to start? CBT Nuggets makes IT training simple, affordable, and dare we say, fun. With short, engaging videos and hands-on virtual labs, you can build real-world skills right from your browser. No expensive hardware, no confusing software. Just practical training that gets you job ready. Learn at your own pace, on your own schedule, from anywhere. Start your 7-day free trial at cbtnuggets.com. Because a better career is just a few clicks away.